Well, how we doing tonight? IB Nation Sports Talk is up and rolling. Notre Dame Clemson coming up this Saturday night, along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. You look a little bit better than you did a couple of nights ago when you and Vince and I were together.
Yeah, I feel a lot better. A lot less things going on today. So, and tomorrow's Friday, so I have no complaints.
No flat tires, no traffic court, none of that stuff today.
Yeah, no up early, no staying out late, all of it combined. I got so much sleep last night that I was so tired that I fell asleep on top of all of the covers with all the lights on. That's how you know you're a tired person, when you don't even the lights and the blankets, none of it bothers you. You just want to sleep. And that was me last night.
That's for sure. Yeah, you're wiped out at that point. Well, glad to have you here today. Tommy Guns is in the house calling out IB Nation. Salty put me on the clock a little bit ago, but we were waiting because I saw this. I saw Salty like looking around in the chat, like, where is everybody at? So we were kind of waiting a little. We waited a couple extra minutes to see if some stragglers came in, and it looks like a few more have crawled in. Hopefully we get some more to kind of liven things up. I know Salty and Tommy Guns will keep things fresh though for us tonight on the old live show. So glad to have everyone with us here tonight. And they're calling for a whiteboard. Do you have the whiteboard ready to go tonight, Jess?
I do.
All right.
Maybe not as extensive as prior, but we'll see. There's a couple.
But there will be whiteboard.
There will be whiteboard, and I've added a new wrinkle, so hopefully the people will enjoy.
Whiteboard wrinkle. All right. Well, this seems like as good a time as any to mention Jesse will be making his IB post-game show debut this Saturday night. He's going to be on the post-game show. I know Brian and Vince will be there. I think I heard Sean Davis is going to be at the game, so I don't know if that means he won't be on the post-game, and you're kind of jumping in for him. But Jesse on the post-game show Saturday night. Are you looking forward to it?
Yeah, I think it's going to be more so most importantly excited because it's the first time I've ever done it. And then second of all, I'm really excited because, the fact that I've never gotten the opportunity to kind of give my live thoughts, my fresh thoughts on the game. But that just means I'm going to have to be a little bit more tuned in during the game. Usually during the game, I'm kind of hanging out, maybe having a couple drinks here and there. So I got to make sure and stay clear.
That's the first thing I told Vince when he told me is, okay, so what version of Jesse are you going to get Saturday night with this night game? So wasn't really sure about that. So Tommy Guns calling for you. Where how do you say that? Is it Massillon?
It is it's I know how it's said, but I can't say it myself.
But that's Ohio, right?
Yeah, that's in Ohio.
That's what I thought. Chris says, am I crazy to think taking Tennessee at +8 this weekend is easy money? I love Tennessee.
I think that is I think if you parlayed Notre Dame and Tennessee's cover, and you threw just a little bit on it, like $5, like $5 though. Like just something real small, good high odds. It's just $5.
Find you a parlay partner that's not Notre Dame though. I'm very gun shy about any bets regarding Notre Dame, just based on the ups and downs. I don't like it.
I want to take Notre Dame money line with the safer.
You feel comfortable?
I mean, I don't feel comfortable with it, but I know that they produce good odds, and I'm a hunter of good odds. So that's where I'm coming from. I think if you could do like a very small, again, another small parlay of like the Tennessee money line and the Notre Dame money line. And I think you could come out with, again, a $3 bet. I bet those odds would give you at least $25-$30 if both of those hit. So I don't know. I think I'm actually astonished that Tennessee is that big of underdogs.
Me too.
That Georgia matchup. I think Tennessee has shown more than Georgia this year, and they have more kind of offensive firepower to go for it.
Yeah, Chris says he's always let down when he plays Notre Dame, and
that's my unfortunate thing too. Is it seems like when I don't play Notre Dame, they do what they're supposed to. When I do play on Notre Dame, I just barely miss. So there's really no winning, in my opinion. So I think I might have to learn finally and just stay away, like you're talking about. Just don't even get tempted about it.
We Are Not Marshall wants to know who Henry has in the UGA Tennessee game. Does he feel Nolan Smith injury could be a factor? And of course, Henry, for those who don't know, is Jesse
right there.
and Naomi's dog. So hovering in the background.
You could see him. He's all sprawled out. He's happy that I'm home. Is
that him pouncing on the bed, just
he's
waiting to yap any minute he gets a chance?
Yeah, anytime there's another dog going by.
All right. Well, if you would pound that like button right now while you're sitting in here in the YouTube chat as we get this live show going tonight. And I'm starring a few other questions as we go to kind of we'll address them in rapid fire if we don't get into them in this main segment. I've got a bunch starred up for the specific sports related questions and stuff like that. And D-Rock Irish, don't bet Notre Dame. Agree. Jekyll Hyde. I want to see what they do. We'll talk about it here in a minute. 7:30 under the lights, Saturday night. Marcus Freeman did his Zoom press conference today. So I wanted to start off. We've got a few comments from Marcus Freeman from his Zoom today. He had some interesting topics come up. I think one of the better Thursday Marcus Freeman media sessions of the season myself, just because of the different kind of things that came up. Covered a lot of different topics on today's show. How interesting is weather? Well, I've been kind of keeping an eye on this, and I haven't mentioned it during the week because you know how things are around here, and I'm sure they're the same in Cleveland because you sit right next to one of the Great Lakes, Lake Erie as well, just like we're, not far from Lake Michigan. Weather around here, like you can forecast it for the weekend, but things can always change. So I haven't really talked to the weather. It's been fairly nice here this week, but it's supposed to get nasty Saturday. Forecast calls for 60% chance for rain Saturday with wind gusts of up to 40 miles an hour. Could calm down by game time, but again, the way the weather is around here, it's just hard to predict exactly when it'll come, when it'll go, what it'll be doing, all that different stuff. So here's what Marcus Freeman said today when he was asked about how the weather could affect the game plan Saturday.
You just got to be aware of it and understand that you got a certain plan that you have when you're going with the wind, and depending on how strong the wind is, you got to have another plan when you're going against the wind. Defensively, you got to be ready for shots when the offense has the wind, and offensively, you got to be ready to take some shots with the wind. Special teams wise, the same thing. Understanding if you're kicking to the wind or kicking against the wind, kicking with the wind or against the wind. So again, it's just having a plan to utilize the wind or understand that, hey, the opponent has the wind or we're going against the wind.
All right, so there's Marcus Freeman. A lot of windy talk mostly about the wind, not necessarily about the rain. And again, maybe it's just windy, maybe it's rainy. Wind gusts up to 40 miles an hour and fairly consistently between 15 and 25 miles an hour is what they're calling for right now. So if it is rain, you've played in plenty of rainy games. So if you're Notre Dame, how does that affect you offensively? Do you think it benefits Notre Dame?
I think that the rain is kind of a neutral factor for Notre Dame. And really the reason I say that is because, their game plan isn't built around deep shots down the field. They're not really developing long plays downfield. They're more of the short, obviously running game, play action, and the shorter passes that come off the play action. So to me, I don't think that the rain does anything, but it can potentially help them, but I really don't see it as too much of a factor. Like I said, it's more of a neutral thing just because they don't develop a lot of plays downfield, nothing that takes a lot of time. But I will say if they are going to consider, taking some shots, I think that, like Freeman said, you have to be cognizant of if you have the wind or not, because there's no reason for Pine to be throwing a 30-yard, ball downfield into 30-mile-per-hour wind potentially. So the only thing that I would be cautious of is, again, like Freeman said, the wind, just making sure that if you are going to maybe potentially call some of these bigger plays, that you at least have the wind with you. I don't think Pine needs to be throwing into the wind. He obviously isn't really built for that. But the run game, I think would obviously give some advantage to the Notre Dame because of their physical run style. It is hard to get your footing as a defensive linebacker when you have someone barreling down on you. It's hard to sink your feet into the ground. Obviously, it might be turf is slick itself too. So playing on natural grass, I think, is a little bit easier because you can actually get more traction, but the turf tends to be a little bit more slipperier. So I think with the physical nature of how Notre Dame runs the ball and how Estime runs the ball, I think that could benefit them just because of what I was saying. You can get more of a punch or initial blow on these defensive linemen and linebackers as they're trying to gather their footing in the rain.
Yeah.
Clint and again, I think
go ahead.
I think motion is another thing, again, that I talk about, I think is something that benefits Notre Dame greatly, but it benefit them greatly even more because if you're getting people moving around in the rain, you're just causing more chances for chaos. So,
and you know where you're going. The defense doesn't. They have to try to shadow you. Yeah. Clint says maybe the wind will help make Pine more accurate. I don't know about that, but at this point, maybe it's worth a shot. Who knows? I think the big thing is, when Notre Dame was down at Clemson in 2015 in the aftermath of Hurricane Joaquin, there was a lot of throwing of the football. When Notre Dame went to Michigan a couple years ago in the rainstorm, you were there for that game. You and your buddy were there for that game. There was a lot of throwing of the football by Notre Dame. Meanwhile, Michigan just ran it, pounded it right at Notre Dame. So let's hope with a different head coach in charge, the game plan is a little bit different. Maybe this is the night, if it is raining, that we're actually fine with Notre Dame just pounding the football and continuing to run the football, huh?
Yeah, I think that this is, if it's going to rain, I think that the rain benefits Notre Dame more so because Notre Dame has more of a dependability on the run game and how it, the rest of their offense develops off of the run game. So yeah. I think that it leans towards Notre Dame. I'm not saying it's like this great advantage, but if it leans more so towards one team compared to the other, I think it leans more in Notre Dame's favor.
Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that for sure. So, the other thing that I wanted to get, I've got a couple other Marcus Freeman comments that we're going to get into here if I can find them. He was talking about playing up and playing down to the competition. And I think that, this is something that we brought up earlier in the week. They're 3-1 against ranked teams this year. Of course, with the loss being to Ohio State, and that was only by 11 points on the road, whereas they're 2-2 against unranked teams. Is that right? Is it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I keep forgetting the number of games that they played. Yeah, that's 8 games. So yeah, so that is correct. So Marcus Freeman asked about this. Again, I'm looking for it here on my thing, and I can't find. It's always great audio. There it is. Here we go.
You can look at it a couple different ways. And is it a home game? Is it a away game thing? Is it a opponent thing? What we got to do is focus on the things that it takes to play well. And no matter who the opponent is, we have to truly focus on what it takes to deserve victory, what it takes to really be able to execute throughout the entirety of a game. And we can't let the opponent dictate our ability to focus on that and our ability to execute. And so, unfortunately, if you look at, some of the previous losses and some of the poor performances that, have they been higher ranked teams? No. But as I tell our players, it's about continuing to improve, and it's about making sure this Saturday that we're performing at a high level, and that's all we really want to focus on.
So what do you think, Jess? Again, we touched on this earlier this week. You heard Marcus Freeman kind of talk about it / not talk about it there, but I don't know if he has his finger completely on it. I think it would be hard as a head coach to get your finger on it. Again, when you're 3-1 against the better teams on your schedule, but 2-2 against the worst teams on your schedule. We've been looking at it more as a home and away thing for most of the season, but what adds to just to how odd this situation is, not only is it just home and away, but they're beating ranked teams away from Notre Dame Stadium. This is going to be the first good team, the first ranked team. It's a top 5 team. It's the first good team that Notre Dame has played at home this season. So what do you make of what you heard from Freeman and just kind of your thoughts on this whole situation here?
Yeah, for me, it's not a home and away thing. It's just playing up and down to competition. I think that we're going to see a very, very good team, or good matchup, good game, good performance this Saturday against Clemson, and it's just solely because of who Clemson is. The rankings just came out; they're in the top 4. They're a playoff team. All these guys know that. And yeah, to me, it's not a home or away thing. It's just knowing who your opponent is. And I think the most important thing that Marcus Freeman said there, and what it kind of sounded like to me, is they need to focus on what they can control versus what they can't control. And they can't control the talent of the other team. They can't control the performance of the other team. But what they can control is that their preparation is the same every week, no matter the opponent. It should almost be like, I know you can't do this, but I wish you could do it. They could do it in the respects of, like, they don't know who their opponent is going to be. They're just preparing and they're just showing up to play. Because I think that that's something that would benefit them. And again, it just comes down to me of controlling what you can control and doing that to the best of your ability. And I think that's kind of been the difference between some of the struggles and the ups and downs that we see. I think that sometimes that they don't really focus. They focus on the uncontrollable things rather than kind of mastering, what they do well and what they can control.
Couple things, because one, the subject of the mental performance coach came up today, and for the last 5 years they'd had a mental performance coach, Dr. Amber Selking. But when Brian Kelly left for LSU, Marcus Freeman apparently decided not to continue down that road. So they don't necessarily, have a mental performance coach. Now, he did say players, if they can talk to coaches, they can talk to, that there are some different resources on campus, if they need, that kind of coaching. But to what you're talking about, the fact that they're playing up and down to their competition, I mean, that's as someone who plays sports, especially at a high level, that's what you want. That's the kind of thing that you need that mental performance coach for. And that had not been an issue over the last 5 years, right? Like they were getting up for playing the lesser teams, quote unquote, on their schedule. Now, again, like the highest of the high ranked teams, they didn't compete with as well, but they were beating the teams that they were supposed to beat. So it's just really curious kind of where things have taken shape when you consider the fact you don't have that specific resource anymore working closely with the team. Like I remember, like when Jonathan Dorr, when he was kind of becoming the kicker and he was having issues early on, there was at least some credit to the mental coach, as well as, a couple mechanical things that he did. So I just find it interesting that their play is going up and down depending on who the competition is, playing up to the competition, playing down to the competition, but you don't have that resource that you used to have anymore.
Yeah, I never realized that was, that was the case. And you bring up a good point. But to me, I think that based on that, Freeman is kind of saying, I am that resource. I believe that I can prepare, I should be capable of preparing these players. And if they have some sort of feeling or need to, they can come to me. And then there's other resources as well. So to me, him eliminating that is almost just kind of like his confidence in himself and who he is as a person and a head coach. So, I admire both sides, but if you continue to kind of see these issues, there's no real downside to having that kind of, specific person dedicated to the football team of helping out guys when they, the mental coach, when they need that kind of stuff. So it's interesting. I'm surprised that he kind of eliminated or didn't go forward with that same type of coach. But to me, again, it sounds like that it's just something that he would rather take on himself, or believes that, his coaching, I guess, strategy, tactics can cover those sort of things.
Yeah. And in the meantime, I do like, the more that I sit back and look at it, I think it's more playing to the level of competition versus home and away. It just happens to be that's how the schedule has broken out this year. So again, I'm confident that Notre Dame can play a good game against Clemson, but I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see what it looks like Saturday, and if they actually do, because we've talked about, well, do they, are there things that they need to eliminate, from what they're doing at home and all these different things. So I guess we'll find out here in a couple of days if they can actually play with Clemson, or, obviously potentially even beat Clemson. We'll find out what that looks like. Now, former Clemson defensive coordinator Brent Venables, a noted reported sign thief, like stealing signals from, down on the sideline. He's now at Oklahoma, of course, but Freeman was asked if that concern, the sign stealing, because there was talk that Venables was doing it 2 years ago when Clemson came to Notre Dame Stadium around this same time of year. Was it just a Venables thing? And here's what Marcus Freeman said.
That's a college football thing. I think competitive advantage is something that all teams will try to do. If you're going to let teams steal your signals, they'll do it. And so we have to every week have a plan for that, continue to switch signals, continue to switch who's live, and have a great plan in terms of how we're going to be able to communicate with the guys on the field, what we want them to do. And so that's every week. It's not a Clemson thing. That's a every week thing, in terms of, if you don't think it's real, then you're probably getting your signal stolen. And so you have to have a great plan for that.
By the way, I saw this from Derek. He sounds sick. He did seem, and like when you listen to him, he definitely didn't seem to have like the same vibe that he usually has, like whether he's sick or just, kind of, feeling it at the end of the week or whatever. He didn't have the same, kind of Marcus Freeman effervescent energy that he usually has. But I don't know how much to read into that, but maybe he is feeling a little bit under the weather. But sign stealing, it's like, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, right? I remember I got lazy coaching third base once and gave a kid a bunt signal. And you remember the sign system that we had, Jess. It was designed so that, like, I didn't have to, I guess it's hard to explain, but it was designed so that you didn't necessarily have to, you wouldn't repeat signals, from one at bat to the next. Touching different parts meant different things. But I got lazy once, gave a kid a bunt sign, and I can't remember if he bunted it foul or he missed the bunt or what he did. So instead of like changing, with the different sequence, I just gave the exact same sequence to make it simple for the kid. And of course, the coach on the other bench yelled, "He's bunting!" So it's like they're out there. That's I've got no problem with sign stealing. I'm just curious. I remember early in your football career, like you were one of the, the guys on the sideline. I don't know if you ever tried to steal signs. Like, did any of your teams ever have guys who were specifically sort of assigned to try to steal signs from the other team?
No, I don't necessarily remember being, having assigned people, but I will say that, I don't see the sign stealing as something that's like bad or voodoo, or, if you're going to use the same signs and you're going to make it kind of a pattern like thing, then yeah, you kind of deserve your signs to get steal. Like, it's something that kind of has to vary each week, and you need to switch up for something like this. But again, I don't ever remember us kind of going out of our way to look at signs, because there was just so much other things going on. It's like,
yeah,
it's really kind of often overlooked. And I'm sure that Venables kind of probably had a guy that sat up in the box on the headset who, potentially kind of did look at signs the whole game. So I don't think it's a player thing. I think it's more of, you might have someone like an assistant or maybe a grad student that might be looking at that kind of stuff. But I don't see anything wrong with it at the end of the day, but I don't think that enough effort should be going into like one, trying to steal signs, and two, maybe seeing if other teams are stealing your signs. You'll know if they have. Like you'll see communication. Your guys more so will hear. Your guys will come off the field and say, "Hey, the other team knows what we're doing," because they're verbally communicating back and forth of, this hot signal gave them some sort of clue that they knew it was coming. And then at that point, that's when you start switching things up. So
yeah,
I don't see it as something that's like, oh, we got to have guys who,
as long as you're not using technology, whether it's video cameras,
right,
whatever it happens, like obviously buzzers and stuff like that, like the Astros were doing. It's ironic that we're talking about sign stealing with the World Series and, being with the Astros being involved in it is going on. But yeah, as long as you're not using technology, I've got no problem with it. If it's just a guy or guys standing on the sideline or in the press box or whatever, trying to steal signs, that's fine. I mean, you're out there trying to win football games. So I've got no problem with that at all. Going back to what we were just talking about with the mental coach, Fred says, do you think Lou had a mental health coach during his tenure? Just saying. Well, no, but I mean, I think we can all, concede that 30 years later, it's a different time. Like, these guys are everywhere, or guys / girl, a lot of people are using mental performance coaches. It is a big part of elite athletics today. So, I mean, just because Lou didn't have it back then, a lot of people weren't doing it back then, but more, the majority, I think, have some sort of, mental performance coach today. I mean, these guys are out there, like you see them everywhere, whether it's on Twitter, you see them talking to like the Yankees have one. Now, we made fun of the Yankees a couple of weeks ago because they were showing the Yankees the Red Sox 2004 comeback win, over the Yankees, trying to motivate them. But, you're right. Lou probably didn't 30 years ago, but most everybody didn't do it 30 years ago. That doesn't mean you don't do it today, because the times have changed a little bit. There's a lot of different focus on a lot of different things. All right, Jess, do you have your whiteboard ready to go?
I do. I am. Actually, give me 1 second here. I gotta hit the present button.
Yeah, John makes a good point. Good coaches, even historically, were motivating their players / athletes. Now the job has been outsourced. That's right. It's really just a different kind of motivation, I think, and a way to redirect your brain. As much as anything, it's all part of the motivation process. Great point. All right, do you want me to put this up there?
Give me one last second.
All
right, go ahead.
All right.
Cool. So the thing that I wanted to get into today was, what does Notre Dame need to do this week outside of kind of the same stuff that we've been talking about over and over the last few weeks, right? Like, because at the end of the day, it's game 9 now. So like, there's only so much you can say that Notre Dame needs to do this or that, but depending on this matchup and, what I think needs to happen in order for Notre Dame to have the most success, these are kind of the things that I wanted to go over. And my key to this game and Notre Dame's offensive success is going to revolve around Drew Pyne's performance. And Clemson has a very good defensive front, and obviously Notre Dame has a very good running game. So it's a battle of the trenches. And so when the running isn't probably going as well as you're accustomed to, a la running over like 200 yards or, 150, when Syracuse is giving up around like 85 a game, you got to do other things to kind of move the ball, right? And so to me, Pyne's got to he can't have a 50% completion game. He's got to be at least 65%. I think they have to get over 100 rushing yards on the ground. But at the end of the day, Drew Pyne is the key to victory, in my opinion. They will only go as far as Pyne's performance in this game. And I think that there's things that Pyne can do outside of throwing the ball that could potentially help this offense. And I think that if Pyne can get more active with his feet in the run game, I think that opens up a lot more for them offensively.
Okay.
So what I wanted to go into was just this is Notre Dame's favorite formation, right? This is 11 personnel. This will be Michael Mayer right here as your wing.
Wing to the right.
Yeah, wing right. So you have 2 wide receivers. You're on the left hash, 1 wide receiver into the boundary. You're in a shotgun set. Michael Mayer is lined up on the wing on the right side, and then you have 2 wide receivers into the field as well. And here's kind of what I would like to see them do against Clemson to get Drew Pine more involved. And so this is kind of like the run variations, and then I'm going to show kind of how the passing can also set up off this formation. Again, the reason why I picked this formation is it is Notre Dame's most probably run formation, and this is how Clemson lined up to this formation continuously against Syracuse. So I thought both of these kind of went well together.
Okay.
So here is just a simple play that I think could help, get Drew Pine more active. So you're going to have your left tackle kick out. Left tackle kick out the end man. Your left guard is going to kick out the interior line, or sorry, he's not going to kick him out. Sorry. Your center is going to reach to that guy, or the defensive lineman on the left side. Your right guard is going to get the guy over the center. And then here's where it kind of gets interesting, because you're going to pull your left guard around in this scheme, right? And then your right tackle is the main thing here, and this will be the key to the game, is how this combination of right tackle and Mayer work up to seal off these linebackers, because these linebackers are playing so pinched inside, and I think Notre Dame's biggest advantage in the run game has to be on the outside. And so you put this linebacker in a bind, right? Because if he's close to the action, he's got to move more this way to make plays. So that has to be the guy that you're taking advantage of, in my opinion. So you use your right tackle to seal off the first linebacker. You're going to use Mayer to seal off the other play side linebacker. And then obviously in an RPO look, you're going to leave the end guy on the line of scrimmage free. And so I'd like to see Pine potentially, hand this ball off. And if the DN crashes down, that's fine. But then if he doesn't, he's got to be able to keep it and take advantage of this whole open area here, especially if this linebacker wants to play this far inside. So again, I think Pine has to do more things to win this game. And I think a big factor of that is using his legs more in the run game. And we saw it. I can't remember when we saw it, but he pulled it and he got a good chunk of yards. Like, he's not obviously Tyler Buckner, but he's got enough wheels where if this defensive lineman crashes down, he can get 3 to 4 yards. And that's what their offense is built around, is just getting 3 to 4 yards.
Well, and by just what you diagrammed right there, you've got most of the offensive line flowing to the left, and that linebacker that you're talking about kind of trying to manipulate there. What you're hoping is his first step follows those 4 offensive linemen to the left side of Notre Dame's play, and that gives Mayer, more time to get to him to block, and creates more space out there on the right side potentially for Pine to run to, or maybe even throw to, depending on what happens on that side.
Yeah, and the good thing about it is no matter if it's the give to the running back or Pine keeps it himself, they have a left guard, the guard pulling out in front of them. So they're gonna have one extra person that can get out in front of them, and hopefully, that guard can step up to the safety that's stepping down, or if a linebacker gets off the block, he can hit that guy. It's just whoever shows up first, essentially, is who that guard's gonna hit. But you're gonna have a lot of open space with a big man in front of you.
Yeah, so that's what Tommy's asking, what the pulling guard is doing. He's basically just there for the convoy, to kind of run interference. It sounds like, right? Like it just depending on what's in front of him. He kind of cleaning up the trash.
Yeah, essentially, the left guard is like your security blanket to clean up anything that leaks out. It's got to be, it's gonna be picking up whoever's kind of there in that open space. But the main thing is these 2 end guys here have to wall off the linebackers, because the linebackers are the most fitted to make this play, right? They're designed to stop run. You're not asking your safety to come down and shed a offensive lineman and potentially make the play. So again, I like this because, flow is going this way. You're sealing off this guy, this guy, this guy. Your guard comes around, and hopefully these last 2 guys can seal off the linebacker, and you kind of have an open convoy in this open area right here. Again, where you're just trying to get anything more than 3 yards is a bonus. But as long as you get 3 yards, that's ultimately what they're looking for.
Well, and I mean, there are other things that you can do on that basically as well, because you're pulling that guard. I mean, it sets up for counter tray type stuff as well, where your running back is taken, because those 4 offensive linemen their flow is going to the left, so the running back takes the initial step to the left, and then you can hand off to him going back to the right as well, because you've got that pulling guard in front of him again, like counter trade type stuff.
Exactly. So that is just a big piece of where I would like to see Pine get more involved, like, because I don't think that the shoulder, he should be like, if Clemson can prove that they can stop the run because they have a good defensive line, Pine's got to do more throwing the ball or more with his feet, and I'm more inclined to allowing him to do more with his feet, because I just don't think that he's built around letting these long pass plays develop, and that's nothing against him. I just think if your quarterback needs to do more to potentially win the game, why not add another threat and be able to use his legs a little bit more?
So, multiple questions about whether that guard would block your defensive tackle there, because the tackle is unblocked. Are you relying on that defensive tackle again because everyone else is flowing to the left, like he's going to make defensive end? I'm sorry, not defensive tackle. Like he's going to make that step inside. Like he's got to be accounted for. Obviously, I think that's what everyone's wondering.
Yeah, so I mean, in an RPO scheme, he's the read man. So if he's crashing down, you're going to fake it to your running back, and your running back essentially blocks him by getting tackled, and now you have a pulling guard out front of your quarterback that's running right behind him. Gotcha. Or say, the defensive lineman, realizes RPO. Okay, well then that leaves a wide open hole between where Mayer's blocking off the linebacker and this defensive end is occupied out here. So either way, he has to go unblocked because he's the read man in the situation.
Okay. All right. What else you got?
So next thing I have is another action, same kind of concept. And this is why I like this concept a lot, is because you can get away with showing the same motion, the same kind of setup, but running pass out of it, right? So again, what you want to do on this play is you could still use a pulling guard and not pass. The pulling guard just can't go downfield, right? Like right. That's the whole concept. So again, left tackle is going to kick out this guy, center is going to reach for this guy, right guard is going to reach for this guy. Your guard is now going to pull and kind of sit here and more than likely combo this guy or maybe a linebacker that's coming down. But again, you're showing the same overall look, but now you're getting into a pass concept where you can leak, Mayer kind of out like this. And then you want to potentially, you can run your inside wide receiver here on a deep kind of outpost. You run this guy up and over, and this creates a good concept because now, this defensive back, let me grab edit. This defensive back is probably going to have to follow this guy over into here. If this guy comes down, your safety is going to more than likely kind of be playing in this area. And now we have either a one-on-one matchup, with this outpost, or Mayer kind of sitting down here in the flats, wide open essentially, because this guy is going to be put into a bind of, do I step down? Do I potentially go with this guy? But either way, something should be there in a quick enough time. And that's got to be the key to this game, is Clemson's defensive line isn't gonna allow Pine to sit back there. So it's got to be plays that are designed to get the ball out quickly. And I think these reads are fast enough where you can get the ball out quickly. And again, you're still showing a lot of the same action, but you're confusing them. And these linebackers are, potentially kind of stepping up. You have your safeties kind of stepping up a little bit. And then you're just creating more one-on-one matchups when you're able to do this and kind of show the same motion.
Okay. Here's the question everyone wants to know. Where's the throw it to Tobias Merriweather play?
If I had to do the throw it to, hang on, I'll get there. The throw it to Tobias Merriweather play, that's got to be, again, it can happen out of this set. You're pulling this guard, you're setting him here. Potentially you run, this isn't Mayer, but you run this guy on a streak, and more than likely this defensive back is going to go over there and run with that and have some sort of help, right? Because that guy is man-to-man. So you take this defensive back out of the picture. You got these linebackers kind of stepped up into here. And then you have what you would do next is you would – sorry, I'm trying to get there. You could run Mayer on, again, another – if you ran him on some sort of kind of like seam route like this, that takes out this safety as well. And then you're left on, this side with one-on-one matchup. So at that point, what are you doing to get your guy open? I personally would like some sort of concept, kind of like dueling wheel routes, I guess is what I would potentially call it. This guy kind of comes out here, and then you have this guy coming into here. But what that does is it makes these guys kind of communicate, right? You have to be able to pass those off when you're in man coverage. And with someone's speed and size like Merriweather, I think he could get outside up here and really utilize, these two DBs trying to pass them off as well as being in one-on-one coverage at the same time.
All right. Good stuff. Good stuff. Anything else?
Offensively, that's really, like I said, that's really kind of all I wanted to get into is just showing a lot of the same action out of run and pass, and that'll put these linebackers and safeties in a bind, but you can still accomplish a lot of things and getting Pine more involved. I think Pine has to be a wrinkle to the run game this week, especially if they're going to attack the edge, because the interior of Clemson's defensive line is their strength, and I wouldn't run at the heart of it. I think they have to get on the outside, and everyone knows about their running backs, so why not get Pine involved into the game plan as well?
Yeah, I like it. He's shown that he's mobile enough. He's not Tyler Buckner, but he is mobile enough to make plays with his feet, and you're going to need to run the football against Clemson. It can't all be on Drew Pine's arm. So I like some creative ways to get him involved if possible.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be overly hard stuff. It's just a simple kind of RPO look. If he crashes down, just pull it and grab 3 to 4. I think that's got to be the main, point that they hit on it. If Pine's going to run the ball, just get your 3 or 4 and go down. You don't have to play hero. You don't have to take big hits. Just gain positive yards and keep the ball moving. Stay ahead of the chains or stay on schedule, as a lot of people like to say. And that's all they got to do is just pick up on average of 4 yards per play. And I think that their offense is very well built to do those sort of things.
All right. Good stuff. Good stuff as always. Do we need to take your whiteboard out now?
Oh yeah, I can stop sharing now.
All right. Well, you know what that means. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Oh, I'm ready for rapid fire.
All right, let's do it then. And again, I've got some listener questions from earlier start up because we've got a few different things. Let me see. Get rid of that one. We've already talked about that one. Let's start with this though. Scale of 1 to 10. Will Notre Dame be ranked if they beat Clemson? And will they be ranked again this season if they don't beat Clemson?
If they beat Clemson, I will give them a 10 out of 10 chance of being ranked. I think there's absolutely no way that they aren't ranked if they beat Clemson. If they don't beat Clemson and drop to 4 losses, I don't see them being ranked for the rest of the season. So I would give them like a 3 on the flip side. And the only reason I give them 3 is if the potential, if you beat USC, there's a very small chance that you could come in at like 24, 23 in the very, very last rankings. But if they beat Clemson, I 100% believe they will be ranked after this week.
Yeah, I agree. It's a 10 for me as well, because I think they're knocking at the door right now. Like, at least if you look at the AP and coaches poll, they were. We don't have that from the college football playoff ranking. They were not in the top 25, but I've got to think that they are close. And based on some of the things that we've talked about as well, Notre Dame beating Clemson, one, you've beaten a top 5 team in addition to the other 3 ranked teams that you've already beaten this season. And, so it at least helps extinguish some of the losing to Stanford and Marshall. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. I think they're going to be ranked if they win this week. But if they don't win, and again, depending on what that loss would look like if they lose, if they don't win, yeah, I put it at probably a 2. I think best case, not only beating USC, but then like final polls at the end of the season, if they end up beating USC and win a bowl game, maybe they show up in the top 25. That's it. So I would put it at a 2 if they lose to Clemson this week. Fill in the blank on this one. It's blank that the Notre Dame offense calls the Mitchell Evans run package Mitchapalooza.
I think it's funny and very creative. You know, it brings, like, at the end of the day, everyone knows, you know, what's on the line, right? You're playing Notre Dame, you're playing against high-end opponents. You've lost a couple games that you're not supposed to lose. I think bringing fun and something like this is always welcome. You know, there's always areas where you can have fun, no matter if you're underperforming, overperforming. It's just fun. It's good fun. It obviously probably gives him some confidence knowing that a whole package is named after him, and they've had a lot of success with it this year. So if it's not, you know, I don't mind it. And if it keeps working, then, you know, call it whatever you want, but I'm all on board.
Do you know what it's in reference to? Mitchapalooza.
I don't. Honestly, I don't know what it's in reference to.
Very disappointed. Living in this house for as long as you lived. This is an old school reference because bring your green hat, Snoop. We're going streaking in the quad. You know what I'm saying? Will Ferrell, Mitchapalooza, Speaker City, Vince Vaughn. We get a little sand in the living room. You have no idea what I'm talking about, do you?
No, I know the movie. I just don't remember the scene itself.
Yes, they called it Mitchapalooza because Mitch, played by Luke Wilson, you know, his girlfriend had the thing at the beginning of the movie, and so he moved out into this house. They were re-releasing him into the wild. They called the party Mitchapalooza, where Snoop Dogg was performing in the backyard, the back porch presented by Speaker City. So, and I think it's awesome, the fact that the Mitchell Evans package is called Mitchapalooza. Anytime you can work an old school reference in, that is a good day with me. So I think it's cool.
Do you think they were going for that, though? Do you think many of them know what old school is?
The players don't, but I know Tommy Rees does. You know, Tommy Rees, he knows what old school is. He's up on that. That's yes. It's a direct reference.
Okay.
Where do you rank Clemson among Notre Dame's rivals, Jess? This is something we touched on a little bit again earlier this week.
You know, when I think of Notre Dame rivals, I think of like early, 2008 to 2000 and kind of like 16 era, where it was Stanford, USC, Michigan State, Purdue. Like, to me, a serious rivalry involves a trophy because there's something to play for every year. The trophy travels with the team. I would put them as like a middle tier rivalry at this point, just because of the recent, obviously they're playing the ACC heavy schedule. Clemson is the best of the ACC teams. Notre Dame is often on the upper side of, the ACC teams as well. So naturally the two best ACC teams are going to become rivals. But I don't think it's like this big rivalry yet. I don't put it up there with USC. I don't put it up. I think Stanford is still more prominent than Clemson is. I don't care if Stanford's been bad. It's still someone you've played for a long time. You still beat up. There's still a trophy involved. I think Michigan is a much bigger rival, even though they've been off the schedule the last few years. So for me, it's just kind of like meh. It's a half kind of they're in there, but it's not their top tier rival.
Exactly. It's becoming maybe a little bit of a national rivalry. Obviously USC, it's never going to overtake that. It's never going to overtake Michigan. But I would say because of this ACC agreement, they still haven't played as often as North Carolina, for example. Here's where it really, because I asked the Clemson writer when I talked to him, and we'll have that in Saturday's show. He said, there are enough other teams in this region, and that's the thing for Clemson. They're a Southern school. There are, enough other schools in that region that they are more rivals with than Notre Dame. Now, they're playing more frequently. They've played in games that mattered. They played in a college football playoff game, but Clemson won lopsided. They played in the ACC championship game. Clemson won lopsided. The only game Notre Dame has won so far was 2 years ago at Notre Dame Stadium. If Notre Dame starts winning more of these games against Clemson, then there's some actual rivalry kind of to it, because both sides, especially in something this young, when they've only played 5 previous times, both sides have to be able to hold their own. They have to be able to win these games for it to become some kind of actual rivalry. And yeah, I mean, like Michigan State, as Stymie says, is a better rivalry, but they don't play up, they don't play each other anymore. And that was just, it was downright bitter at times. But I want to go back to what we were just talking about, the Mitchapalooza. Tommy Guns, Jesse, wants to know, if you're the defensive coordinator, 3rd and 1, he's out there. How do you defend Mitchapalooza?
For me, it's hard because this is like the overall design of the play, right? You get you're essentially a QB sneak isn't relative to QB. It's the sneak part. It's getting under center and just plowing straight ahead. And they went to the Mitchapalooza because he's just a bigger guy. He's harder to take down. He's going to be, obviously he's got longer reach. He can move. And so for me, the best way to do that is as soon as I see that tight end coming into motion, especially because Notre Dame has it on film now, right? It's got to be in all the defensive coordinators' minds on short down situations. Is honestly, I have my 2 interior linemen cut, like hog roll as what they used to call it, at the center guard. And immediately I have my linebackers, as soon as you see that guy go into motion, I have my 2 linebackers come over top, essentially A gap. You have your 2 defensive linemen take out the legs, and then you fire your 2 linebackers kind of over top. So basically you're getting a high-low because your defensive linemen are taking out the legs, and then your linebackers are coming over top to clean up. So I would pinch both of my linebackers down into the A gap and just shoot them in there as soon as I see that tight end come under motion and get under center.
And I would think now that it's been on film in 2 different games, someone is going to see that here pretty soon, and it's going to be defended differently. Maybe the key then is, how does Notre Dame adjust to that? Is there a part 2 to Mitchapalooza when
at
when
what point do we
fake
and he just throws a quick pop pass to a tight end?
Because remember, he was a high school quarterback. He did play some quarterback in high school.
It's got to be, now that it's out there, you got to have some sort of fake ready. And that's, again, another thing I'd love to see Tommy Rees do, especially in the goal line. Draw up something that no one has seen before. That's short yardage plays. You can fake a QB sneak and just pop it right over to Mayer. I'm sure that the first time you run it, they're going to sell out to run and someone's going to be open. And it's just, if he's played quarterback, that's even better because he could most definitely throw a 3 to 4 yard pass.
Yeah, I agree. Fill in the blank. If Notre Dame becomes bowl eligible, there are 2 ACC SEC bowl tie-ins this year. One is in the ReliaQuest Bowl, and the other is the Gator Bowl. And that could mean the Irish face LSU, and the prospect of a Notre Dame Brian Kelly bowl reunion is blank.
Is juicy. I think that would be so fun. Honestly though, what more at this point in the season? And Brian Kelly's is having success. They're number 10 in the rankings right now in the college football rankings. Obviously they have a pretty tough back end of the schedule here. If Notre Dame can handle, their back end of the schedule as well, take care of their back end and hope LSU kind of falls here and there, I think it'd be a great matchup. I think it would be kind of like the final blow that I think many people are waiting for. Like if Notre Dame can beat Brian Kelly after he left in what was kind of a down year, I think that would be very gratifying for a lot of people. It'd be a lot of juicy drama at the end of the day.
That would be, like, in terms of mid-tier bowl games, that would be like the storyline of storylines for ESPN, if they were doing the ReliaQuest Bowl or the Gator Bowl, to have Notre Dame and LSU, and it would be their 3rd bowl matchup in the last 7 or 8 seasons,
right?
Something like that. But
always good games, though. That's the thing, is
they were
good games.
Yeah, they were good games. But to have Brian Kelly on one side against the team that he just left last year and Marcus Freeman on the other, it's almost too much. It's almost too good to be true. It's almost too good to ask for. Yeah, like John says, teacher versus the student, and the whole thing. It's part of me says, do we really want that circus? Is that what we really want? But then at the same time, it's just so juicy. And I mean, LSU's gonna take another loss this week. I don't see any way they're gonna beat Alabama. And even if Notre Dame ends up in that 4-loss range, I think that there's a really good chance it could happen. So this is going to be one to watch as things kind of take shape down this last month of the season. We could be headed in that direction because obviously Notre Dame gets an ACC bowl spot, and we could very well see Notre Dame and LSU, and yeah, like ratings would be through the roof. And in terms of, again, like that mid-tier type bowl game, and that would be the one that I think that you would sign up to see. That would be your must-see TV if you've got Notre Dame, LSU, Brian Kelly on TV. All right. We've got some World Series stuff. And before we get to the question that I was going to ask, Salty has just been all over me about my World Series prediction. And he wants to know if you have questions for me about the World Series prediction. It's like, I fell on it last night. You've got to make a prediction. I just like the Astros we saw last night are the Astros that I thought that we were going to see this entire World Series. I just felt like in baseball, it's so hard for that, like underdog little guy to continue to beat teams that are better than them. And the Astros were just so much better than everyone, first in the regular season, then in the playoffs. And don't get me wrong, I want the Phillies to win. I'm not like against the Phillies by any means. I want the Phillies to win this World Series, but I just thought that the Astros, as good as they have been all regular season and to start off the playoffs, that they were going to maybe give up one game against the Phillies. The fact that it's 2-2 is something else. And speaking of which, what's the cooler World Series happening this week? The Astros combining for a Game 4 no-hitter, or Rhys Hoskins' wife buying Phillies fans 50 beers at the concession stand twice?
Oh, it's got to be the free beer for the Phillies fans. That's commitment. I don't care about a combined no-hitter. Combined no-hitters happen all the time. Is it hard to throw a combined no-hitter? Sure, but it is much harder for one guy to throw a no-hitter in the entirety of a World Series game. So I'm taking the beers all day. I think that is definitely the more cooler moment. And if I'm a Phillies fan, I'm finding where Hoskins' wife is going to be, because I'm trying to stake out for some free beer.
I know. She went after the 5th inning, 2 games in a row. She went to the concession stand. I think he needs to throw down some money and buy like 500 cans of beer tonight. And the best part about it is, it's not, because we don't have a beer sponsor like we used to. It's not this watered down Budweiser or whatever. She's out there with Yinglings. She's buying the real Pennsylvania beer, my friends, at the concession stand, and they are tall boy Yinglings. I saw a picture of her on Twitter last night. It is awesome. And it sounds like Rhys Hoskins' wife is a cool hang. So it is by far, in my book, that is by far the cooler happening from the World Series. It's been a great series so far. I wish I could have stayed awake last night because I missed the end. I was trying hard, but I crashed on the couch, I think, around the 8th inning, as it turned out. All right, as the World Series continues, fill in the blank with this one. Best active manager in baseball is blank.
This was hard. This was really hard, actually. It came down to 2 people for me. Do you have a guess before I say mine? Who do you think my 2 are?
I would say Terry Francona is one. I don't know who the second one would be, though. I'll just say mine is Terry Francona. I'll get it out of the way because one, to be the manager of the Red Sox, to break the curse of the Bambino, to be the guy in his first season, and then win another one 3 years later, like that alone right there should put you pretty close to the Hall of Fame. And then to get the Cleveland Indians back to the World Series, and year in and year out, all the expectations, all the preseason predictions, for the most part, since Francona has he resurrected Cleveland in his time there. And I may have just said Indians, I don't know, but Guardians, obviously. But like this was supposed to be the year of the White Sox, and look what happened. The Guardians win the division. They get back to the playoffs. So to me, Francona is number one. I'm honestly, I like Cora in Boston because, again, like, here's a guy who the Red Sox stunk the year before he took over. He takes over. They end up winning a World Series. Now, that's been a few years ago. What's that been? 4 years ago at this point now, and they've been kind of up and down. He was out of baseball for a little bit because of the Astros scandal and that whole thing. I think he's pretty good. I'm not sure who number two would be for you. Well, I mean, I don't even know who number one is. Is Francona number one for one thing?
So I haven't picked number one yet, but Francona was one of two people I was considering between.
Okay.
And largely because of what you talked about. He won 2 World Series with the Red Sox, broke the curse with the Red Sox. And then more impressively this season, taking the Guardians to the playoffs. They had they had the youngest roster in MLB. They had one of the lowest payrolls. They had very low expectations, a lot of inexperience, and he got those guys to play in a way that made them win. They played good defense. They played, they hustled. They controlled what they could control to the best of their ability. So it was between Terry Francona and, drumroll, Bruce Bochy. I think that what he did with San Francisco, the 3 World Series with the Giants in a span of a 10-year decade.
I guess technically he's active again because he came out of retirement. Now he's with the Rangers, but he hasn't managed for the last couple of years. Yeah.
So that's where I put it. I guess I'm cheating a little bit because he is coming out of retirement and he is recently just active. But for me, it's Bochy and Francona right now.
Buck is a good one, Brian NY. I hope you're a Mets fan and not a Yankees fan, but Buck is a good one. I've always liked Buck Showalter. Like, when he took over in Baltimore, he said, that was an Orioles team sitting at the bottom of the division. He said, we're going to stand up to the Yankees. We're going to stand up to the Red Sox. And they didn't win a whole lot of games total his first couple years, but they always competed hard with those two teams. And, he managed to get them to the playoffs and, maybe overachieved a little bit. He's done well everywhere he is. I was really disappointed to see the Mets get bounced so soon in the postseason this year. I'd like to see him be able to win a World Series before it's all said and done. What about Dusty Baker? Like, I know you're down on the Astros. Do you like Dusty at all? Would you like to see Dusty? Like, do you have any sentimentality? Would you mind seeing Dusty win a World Series finally?
I considered Dusty Baker for a long time, and I more than would love to see Dusty Baker win a World Series. And I feel bad for the guy because he's just continuously come up short. I think that he definitely deserves to get one, but unfortunately not at the Astros' expense. I'm rooting for the Phillies. And so, yeah, I would like to see Dusty get one, but just obviously not this year. And obviously another great coach and that's what shows, probably proves how hard it is to win a World Series. Dusty Baker left the Giants after being in the World Series, took over the Cubs, had some good seasons with the Cubs, and ultimately just didn't get it done, quickly enough. And they kind of spiraled back to being bad. And then he went to the Nationals. They had a World Series appearance. He's had a World Series appearance with the Astros that they didn't win a few years ago. And now he's back again. So I think Dusty Baker is the perfect, like, if you showed a picture of why it's so hard to be a professional coach, Dusty Baker, face would pop up because he's the definition, in my opinion.
Yeah. Tyler Evans with a super chat. Do you wish the Cowboys traded for a wideout or pass rusher at the trade deadline?
Oh, 100% a wideout. I think their pass rush is completely fine. They actually added an interior defensive lineman that should help them a little bit. But as long as pass rush goes, they're fine. They're leading the league in QB hits, pressure, sacks. I'm okay with what they're doing on the pass rushing front. I would definitely have liked to see them get a wideout. I think CeeDee Lamb, I think it just opens up their offense that much more. They're obviously are good at running the ball this year, and I think that the passing game has kind of taken a back seat compared to where it was last year when you had Cooper, Gallup, Schultz, CeeDee Lamb. I would have liked to see them add Brandon Cooks. I know there was a lot of talks of it. I think he's the perfect kind of slot wide receiver guy with James Washington being hurt. But James Washington is going to be coming back here soon. I don't know the exact timetable, but, they've been kind of relying on Tolbert, who's been a rookie guy that hasn't really come along yet. I don't think CeeDee Lamb is 100% like the guy at the number
Noah
one
Brown
spot.
was good when Cooper Rush was in there. He kind of disappeared, and now he's injured, the last couple of weeks. He's he's shown some flashes. I think that they could use a legit number 2 type guy. I've liked Gallup as a number 3 guy in the past. He really hasn't stepped up since he's been back. I don't know how much it's because of his own injury, but the Cooks thing, apparently they wanted a 2nd and a 4th round pick for him, and that's just a little bit too rich.
And Cooks had like 18 million guaranteed next year, and Houston didn't want to eat any of that. So the Cowboys are just going to take on 18 million next year and give you a bunch of trade compensation. So
what do you think about OBJ? Because he's still lurking.
Too much drama.
That's kind of what I think too.
I think his personality fit better in Vegas, but with what the Cowboys got going on, and there's so much. Jerry Jones loves his drafted talent, his homegrown talent. I don't think that they're just going to bring in that big kind of personality OBJ, especially with the success that they're having so far this season. You don't want to throw off team chemistry and that kind of stuff. I think they'd have to go after more of an Amari Cooper type, a guy who lays low, kind of puts his head down and just plays football. I just think OBJ is too much for the Dallas Cowboys.
I agree. Stymie going back to the Dusty Baker. He said $100 million for Alfonso Soriano wasn't Dusty's fault. And that's a very fair point. I mean, that's really what wrecked that whole kind of era, was overpaying Alfonso Soriano, and then he didn't produce. But Joe Madden overcame Jason Hayward. So
Stymie brought up a good point. Did you see Jerry Jones's Halloween costume this year?
I missed it. What was it?
He was a blind referee for Halloween. It was actually pretty comical. One of my buddies sent it to me last night.
I didn't. I'm going to have to go find that after we finish up here. Fill in the blank. It's blank that the NBA recently told the regional sports TV networks that they all need to get their broadcasters to arenas to broadcast road games rather than having them broadcast remotely as they've been doing the last couple seasons.
It's kind of confusing because if it's working and you don't have to have these, these broadcasters travel as much, then what's the real downside? Like if the product is
Let me stop you there. See, I thought since you watch a little more NBA, like maybe you've picked up some things with these guys not being on the road. But as someone who broadcasts games, and as someone who had to broadcast basketball games from my living room on a TV a couple of years ago, I can tell you there is a big difference being courtside at the basketball game as opposed to sitting in front of even a nice high definition, big screen TV. There is a huge difference in being there. And not only that, the ability to travel and be on the road with the team, because these guys travel with the team on the charters when they go on the road. There is just so much more that you learn about the team, the relationships that you develop both with the coaches, the players. You find out things that you can't find out basically just sitting in your living room broadcasting basketball games that way. And I think the quality of the broadcasts is immensely better. So for me, I hand it to the NBA for putting their foot down and saying, look, it's been almost 3 years now. You got to get these guys back on the road. There's a quality, there's a standard that we're holding you to, and you got to do it. That's my take as a broadcaster.
Hearing that perspective, I am 100% on board then, because I do agree. I think that, obviously with the camera and the TV, you can't see the full court all at one time. You're only able to see what the camera is showing you. And a lot of the job is being able to see the entire court at once. I think that overall that it is a great thing then, because we're going to see a better product and we're going to see better analysis from these broadcasters.
Yes, exactly. And
it's your job, right? Like it's your duty.
That's right.
It's part of the job. So if you're really complaining about it, then I don't think that it should be your job at that point.
And like ESPN has still been doing this with different games. It's essentially, now this started even before the pandemic, like ESPN and some other networks too started doing the studio games where it's like exactly what I'm talking about. You get the announcers, you sit in front of a TV, and they were calling them remotely so that they could save the expense, the airfare and the hotels and the whole thing of sending announcers on the road. And there's to me, sometimes it's harder to tell, but like, especially like if there have been some times where it becomes pretty obvious that they're not at the games. Just like when they're late on some stuff, or there was like a home run call. I remember, like, I think it was Matt Veskurgen thought that a ball was like a warning track out, and no, it was a home run. So there's a big difference in being there and not being there. All right, last question for tonight. The Twitter blue check mark controversy has been raging this week after Elon Musk, who's now the new owner of Twitter, says he wants to charge $20 a month for people to keep their blue check marks. So how much, Jesse, would you pay to have a blue check mark? How much would you pay per month?
I think I would have to put it at like $5 per month, because honestly, I don't really care about it. I don't have many followers. I don't think many people care about what I'm saying at the end of the day. So, to me, it doesn't really matter. But this whole Elon thing is just so crazy because, there's just other things that are coming out. Like tomorrow's going to be like the big change over at Twitter. Like he's firing half of his staff. He's requiring everyone come in, no more remote work. It's all 100% in office. I just think that there's going to be kind of like sweeping changes coming forward. And it's just kind of crazy that, like, one, he now owns Twitter, and two, he can just do whatever he wants. He can charge you $20 for a check mark if you want. He can fire half the staff. He can demand all these things. So to me, it's just a part of like this bigger kind of like sweeping changes that are coming. So, I think again, I don't really care about it. I don't have enough of a following. So like, give me like $5 a month, I think is where I would top out at.
Yeah, I think that is the most as well. Stymie says he likes the concept. If it eliminates bots, it's worth it. I mean, does it eliminate bots though? Because like, to me, you're like having the one benefit, predominantly the blue check mark is a status symbol, right? But there are people who are high enough profile and have enough of a following that you need it. And like, from a sports journalism standpoint, like I went through and I looked through like a lot of the Notre Dame media because I couldn't even remember who had one and who didn't. For the most part, it skews younger. Like the younger guys made sure they got their blue check marks right away. But there are a lot of older guys like me who couldn't care less about the blue check mark. Now, there are a couple older guys who do. Like Brian has one, Driscoll, and Ryan Roberts, our recruiting guy, has one. And I think that, like, from a reporting standpoint, there should be incentive on Twitter's part to want to have easier access to the blue check marks, because it eliminates the fake accounts, like people posing as, reporters, or, like with news, breaking news and those kind of things. Like there's Adam Schefter with the blue check mark, and there's Adam Schefter, the fake account, right? And there's others like that as well, whether it's Jeff Passan or, whoever, those big name people happen to be. So like having the blue check mark in those cases is something, it's good to have, so that you can tell the difference between fake and real. Otherwise, again, it's like largely a status thing. So I would never pay for it. I've never, tried to go down the verification route, even though I could. And it just doesn't mean enough to have that little status symbol. But I do understand why people would want it, again, because I think that it helps filter out, and like if people are paying attention, you still see people retweet the fake Adam Schefter account though, right? It's like, so that's the thing. I don't know that it, and I agree with what John's saying. I don't know that it affects bots. It's to cut down on misinformation when the fake accounts post as a famous person and it gets reported on. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Yeah, like 99 cents a month. Like I can see why Elon Musk is looking for different revenue sources, because that's why he tried to bail on this whole Twitter thing to begin with, because he said, I'm going to do it. And then he's like, oh, I don't know that I researched this enough. There's some money to not be made. And now he's trying to figure out, okay, well, if I charge for the blue check mark, then I can still make some money off it. So I don't know if the price was low enough and I was really that into it, maybe $1 a month or something like that, or $15 a year. I don't know, something along those lines. That's the most I'd be willing to go to, though.
There was one last question that you had starred that I wanted to get to, and
Okay.
Tyler was asking kind of what I thought of the top 25. I'm sure
Yes.
everyone has heard what Brian and Vince and everyone else potentially has to say. You know, as you know, I don't get super into the rankings right now because they're so preliminary, and then, you know, most of these teams like Alabama and everyone loads up the back end of their schedule. They play all these kind of easier games at the beginning as like kind of the, you know, practice rounds, and you see the kind of their more serious games towards the end of the schedule. And that's really what we're getting into right now. I guess the only thing that I would say I didn't agree with, excuse me, in the top 25 is I don't think Texas belongs. You know, Texas is 5-3. I don't think a 3-loss team really belongs. It's not like they've been good in the past. They're still trying to get back. They still play in the Big 12. That's not, you know, one of the harder Power 5 conferences. So
Their best win is Oklahoma still, right? Like,
right. And so I don't necessarily believe that that Texas belongs. I think the other thing that was kind of confusing is honestly how high LSU was as a 2-loss team. And I think Ole Miss should be kind of up there a little bit more. I think Ole Miss has put on an impressive resume at 8-1 right now. And they're behind LSU. And obviously the reason is that LSU beat them, sure, whatever. But LSU just doesn't have the resume to be the number 10 team for me. So outside of those two things, those are really the only things I saw. Maybe you could make an argument about Michigan and Clemson. They're pretty much the same team to me, though. Haven't played a whole bunch of people, but that'll get changed. Obviously, Notre Dame is playing Clemson this week, so that's going to provide one of their more tougher matchups this season. Michigan has really played no one outside of like Maryland, but they've been dominant running the ball and defensively, as hard as that is to say. So really those are the only things I really saw in the top 25 that kind of were like, but other than that, I liked it, you know, but again, it's so preliminary. There's so much more left in the season for these things.
That's the thing for me. It's still so early. It's the first college football playoff ranking, obviously. And just look at this weekend with the games that you're going to see: Tennessee, Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, and some of these other, and obviously Michigan and Ohio State still have to play down the line. So there are a lot of games still to be played. I said Tennessee, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, LSU. That's what I meant. But you know, there are a lot of games to be played. So I'm not going to get too worried about it. Like you said, the bottom end of the rankings, you know, maybe Texas is in there to help validate Alabama with that one loss ahead of a couple of no-loss teams.
A lot of ACC teams towards like the back end there. You got like Syracuse, Wake Forest, NC State.
That's right.
All back to back to back. You got Clemson in there. So, you know, I'm okay with it. I don't. It is what it is. It all evens out by the time the end of the season comes.
Yep, I agree. All right. Well, thanks for all your insight tonight, as always, and thanks to everybody for being here live tonight. Appreciate you. As always, this, of course, is our final IB Nation Sports Talk of the week. We've got more shows coming up tomorrow. Big recruiting weekend. You'll hear all about that tomorrow, I'm sure, if you haven't heard about it already this week. And, of course, we've got IB Countdown to Kickoff, 10 o'clock Saturday morning, and then the post-game show afterwards. And Jesse will be on with Brian and Vince for the post-game show as well. I'm not sure who else will be there, but I know those three guys will be there. So looking forward to that. Jesse's first post-game show Saturday night after Notre Dame and Clemson. We will talk to you Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. Jess, have a good weekend. Good post-game show. I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. I hope everyone tunes in. I'm pretty excited for this first post-game show. It'll be live and fresh.
Absolutely. I'll be listening. And hit the like button on your way out if you would. Appreciate you. As always, we will talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.